rarely think about the browser. But behind every tab that we open, every Slack message we send, every video we stream, there's energy consumption, carbon emissions, and an invisible infrastructure that's carrying that load. My guests today are Neil Henderson, CEO of Shift, and Maham Azim, a lead engineer at Shift, rethinking about how browser tech can play a role in climate accountability. Shift is a browser company doing something unexpected, building tools that measure and reduce the emissions of your digital life. What started as a productivity platform is evolving into something much more, a window into the unseen impact of how we live online.
I like to call a lot of the solutions and strategies we come up with as consumers of the internet, I like to call it the plastic straws of tech, because all of those small solutions or strategies do make a difference, but unless you solve the problem at its core, which is the physical hardware, the production of that hardware, the disposal of that hardware, and then the maintenance of that hardware and the servers and the network infrastructure, until that is fully renewable, we are kind of just making small dents here and there or trying to reduce or offset. But yeah, like you said, if the infrastructure is carbon neutral or fully renewable, it makes a huge difference. It even reduces emissions for people who maybe aren't even that conscious about their emissions.
Welcome to The Capitalist Hippie, the podcast where we challenge the old rules of business to build something better. I'm Marco Pimentel, marketing expert, entrepreneur, and lover of bold, sustainable ideas. Every week we dive into data-backed insights, groundbreaking ideas, and real-world strategies that help you outthink and outmaneuver the status quo.
I think 100%, or if you can give a higher percent than 100, then go with that number. It's been an amazing thing to kind of rally the team around and behind. Everyone is pumped for it. Everyone can't wait to see this live in the near future for our users and to talk about it. Our purpose at Shift as a company is to empower people to make the most of life online. And this is just perfectly in line with that use this browser and make an impact against climate change throughout the choice that you as a consumer can make for an alternative browser. And I think that's really powerful to add that level of purpose to a team behind the browser.
I just wanted to take one moment here to tell you that this episode also marks the launch of the Shift Impact Grant, a $25,000 grant designed to support sustainability-focused nonprofits, startups, and social ventures building tech solutions for climate and environmental impact. The winner will also receive a support package of tools to help accelerate their work and a feature right here on the podcast. Applications are open now through mid-May. Just submit a short written application about your organization, and if you'd like, include a short video pitch to show us what excites you about the project. You can find all the details and apply at shift.com/impact. Let's get into it. Neil, Maham, thank you very much for joining me today.
Glad to be here. Thanks, Marco.
Thank you.
So we're talking about a browser company today, Shift, and a browser company obviously is focused on technology. We're hearing a lot right now about technology, but mostly around AI and the impact when it comes to the environment, mainly just sucking a lot of energy from the grid, and a bunch of tech companies saying we need to do more for nuclear, we need more energy sources, and the numbers look pretty staggering in terms of how much energy we need to use AI. But being a browser company, you're looking at things a little bit differently. This is not right now, the AI revolution that you're building. You have people using your browser every day for lots of everyday type of things that you do on the web, yet you're thinking about carbon neutrality and the impact that your browser, and I guess highlighting just in general that the web has an impact when it comes to tech. So Neil, maybe just to kind of start with you being the CEO, why this kind of enlightenment around the browser and this idea that there is an impact?
I think this has been something just at Shift and at our parent company, Redbrick, we've been aware of for a very long time that everyone is starting to understand at a much stronger level what type of emissions do occur from technology, from AI, from the web, from servers, from devices. that I think in the past, maybe tech companies could kind of hide behind, oh, we're tech. We don't have a fleet. We don't have real estate. We don't have, a lot of land mass and all those kind of very obvious things. But I think those times are over. And as a tech company, we know emissions are at play, and we want to kind of go head on to address them at Shift and as a browser. I think we've been aware as a software company for a long time that everything you do on the internet each and every day actually has emissions. And that could be sending emails, that could be streaming Netflix. Those interactions and lots of server-to-server interactions do have digital carbon emissions. And I think we just kind of saw the opportunity as the browser company, as the browser product, which often to this day is the access point for consumers to the web, to say, hey, what could we do that's interesting there as owners of this entry point to the web to offer some kind of carbon neutral opportunities as feature sets in our technology. So that's kind of the thinking is that browser is the entry to the web where emissions do occur.
Yeah, when you think about like a web page often is kind of visited and left. But if I think about my browser usage or how I use Shift, I use Shift for hours and hours and hours per day. So my assumption there is that I guess the impact of a browser versus the impact of a publisher that's publishing websites that you go visit 2 or 3 web pages is different.
Yeah, exactly. And I think originally we did kind of think, how could we offer tools to individual website publishers for measurement and then help them offset from their kind of web domain, website perspective. But we are thinking bigger with this tech actually being applied to the browser level, because we can help to kind of measure and offset it all, which is really special. Because to your point, Marco, a lot of people are in and around and using their browser each and every day for many hours for all sorts of purposes. So it's a really powerful opportunity.
So let's ground this. When we talk about digital emissions, we're talking about real energy usage, often powered by fossil fuels. Every email, every Zoom call, every spreadsheet in the cloud is powered by data centers pulling electricity from the grid. And with AI and streaming on the rise, digital is becoming one of the fastest growing sources of emissions most consumers never think about. There was a really cool example with, I think it was Volkswagen, where they pushed out a website that was conscious of how much data was to highlight on this product page, just because obviously if you're a car company, videos and heavy loading and builders and building, build out your car, and they did a kind of a light example. I think it was based out of a consultancy out of the UK that built it, which was kind of an interesting highlighted example that this is happening and this is kind of a problem. But the technical side here must be, I'm assuming, the issue. And so maybe Maham, we can bring you in now at this point is, yes, you're an entry point to the web. People are using Shift for, sometimes hours and hours per day. How do you even begin, or why did you even begin to start looking into this? And what did you kind of notice or find right away?
Yeah, like Neil mentioned, we had started on early on with tools that could be embedded in other websites. And we were looking at all of the data, and it was really interesting to see all of the emissions of each of the websites, especially we could see when users are visiting and the impact of that single page visit. And it was all disjointed data. We were getting data from one website and not the other, or one page and not the other. And it was something that was in the web page that gets activated. And we were like, what if we put that in a browser? And the browser is always active as long as it's running. So in theory, it could constantly look at the emissions and give us a very holistic view of a user's web browsing experience. It wouldn't just be one website or just streaming. It would be everything that goes on within Shift.
Yeah, and from that side, from a consumer side, though, was it quite obvious that this impact was was it like a large impact across everything that they do? I'm trying to think about examples as, I guess, YouTube to Netflix to watching a sports game or highlights to, I don't know, sending, 200 emails in a day or being on Slack. So I'm assuming all of these things are just driving the amount of energy use that's kind of going back and forth.
Yeah, definitely. I think our browser is in a unique place where we are serving content from other publishers or other servers, and we don't really have any control over where the data is coming from or um, how it's been modified or how it's been made efficient. But we are serving it, and it is going through our browser, and that comes under our responsibility. So it's been really interesting to see how some of the publishers have made efforts to optimize it, and we could kind of see it on our end. And we know for a couple of different streaming services, there's so much data passing through, and we can see that through the browser. And it's pretty cool to be able to measure emissions based off of that. And we kind of have a little extra insight when we're sitting inside the browser than we do just looking at a website from the outside.
This is where things get complicated and interesting. Shift doesn't control the websites you visit, but it's still the gateway to everything you do online. So even though the emissions technically come from third parties, Shift is saying, what if we just take that responsibility anyway? Not many tech companies are willing to do that. And how does, like, if I think about solving this on like in a cross-industry basis, is this and obviously correct the audience, myself, and kind of educate us on this. But if we think about Google, if we think about Amazon, or we think about the popular web services that are powering a lot of websites and services, is it as simple as them switching to solar powered data centers that power the internet to solve this issue, or is it a lot bigger and granular than that?
That's a great point. And to a degree, yes. If we change or if we make all of the physical infrastructure lying underneath the internet renewable, or it's built with sustainability in mind, that does make a huge impact. But I think I like to call a lot of the solutions and strategies we come up with as consumers of the internet, I like to call it the plastic straws of tech, because all of those small solutions or strategies do make a difference. But unless you solve the problem at its core, which is the physical hardware, the production of that hardware, the disposal of that hardware, and then the maintenance of that hardware and the servers and the network infrastructure, until that is fully renewable, we are kind of just making small dents here and there or trying to reduce or offset. But yeah, like you said, if the infrastructure is carbon neutral or fully renewable, it makes a huge difference. It even reduces emissions for people who maybe aren't even that conscious about their emissions.
There's a company that has been around for quite a long time, Ecosia, that has, I think it's an extension that allows somebody to change their search engine to Google. They get maybe some sort of rev share, maybe it's not Google, but the idea is that they plant trees based off this revenue. And what started really small became quite a well-known company with a lot of really great impact. So the decision to do this at Shift, or to look into building all this technology and to work towards climate neutrality, was this because of a consumer demand, or are you foreseeing kind of where the market is going and trying to do something a bit differently?
I think we definitely think this area will only increase in kind of awareness and education. And I think people are going to be demanding companies in tech to be more and more conscious and aware and delivering solutions that address, climate concerns. So we definitely think this audience is there already. And to your point, Marco, we can look at search engines like Ecosia to kind of prove that out, that people are using a search engine that is an alternative to the majors that plants trees, and they have a substantial user base. So the audience is there. And we feel strongly it's only going to get bigger. I think what's really special about Shift is we're not trying to address it just at the search engine level. We've talked many times already on the podcast today, we're trying to cover everything that occurs within our browser, which we all know goes way beyond just search in a search engine. But yeah, we're excited for this space to get bigger and to be ready with an amazing offering for it.
Yeah, and trying to think about the market and the consumers. I was reading a report from a company that does a lot of advertising support for climate conscious businesses called Futera, and they are saying that I think one of the kind of the misses is like, what does a consumer get, or what does a consumer not get by going with something or using something that is thinking about the climate as well as kind of a core piece. And I guess in this scenario, though, you're still fully building the kind of the core technology of your browser. But this is just an added benefit to the consumers. Is there any drawbacks for consumers on this side? Like, are you slowing down the way things are rendered? Or is there anything there, I guess, technically that there's a trade-off, or really is there no trade-off?
I think in terms of the browser performance, there isn't really any trade-off. We worked really hard to make sure that from a user side of things, you don't notice a difference in performance, or nothing's laggy, nothing's choppy. One of the things to notice, though, is it is a browser that is running constantly. And one of the engineers on our team had a great analogy, which was, are we running a small plane next to a bigger plane to measure the carbon emissions? So the tech that we're putting in that is measuring the carbon emissions of the browser, what about that? What about the emissions of that? And I think that's the first question that comes up in a lot of users' mind as they are using the browser. And one of the really cool things about this space is when we started working on this, a lot of the work that was being done in terms of awareness and in terms of measurement, but slowly researchers in the scientific community are moving towards production, and we're keeping on top of that. We're keeping an eye on what it is that we can do on our end to reduce our emissions and reduce our impact. So in an ideal world, there's no trade-off, and we are also reducing our impact by as much as we can.
Now, if you're building software, this is probably where you raise an eyebrow. Running constant analytics on browser activity? That sounds like a resource hog. But the Shift team isn't just bolting on sustainability, they're designing around it. And they're also asking a question we rarely hear. How do you build climate accountability directly into product architecture without slowing things down? The browser is a bit unique. It's quite technical. People use it very differently than just a web page. I guess why, has that been a challenge and is also a kind of a benefit when it comes to thinking about the carbon neutrality of what you're building?
Yeah, I think it's been a bit of both. It's been a challenge in that it is such a complex product. There's so many pieces, way more than just looking at a website or a web app. But I think it's the best place to start looking at the emissions more holistically, because it is the gateway to everything we do online. And from this one product, we have insight into so many other web apps and web pages and sites being visited. And I think as a browser, we're in a unique position where we have a bit more insight into what goes on behind the scenes to serve content in a browser or on a web page, or what goes behind the scenes in streaming video. And we're able to get some extra insights from there and include that in our carbon estimation as well.
In building this, was this a decision to build this internally? Was it to create a small team? Did this start from a hackathon? Like, how did you put that energy and focus into building this?
It started as an idea. I was part of the University of Victoria's Inspire program, and Marco and Tobin had this idea about how can we even measure our carbon emissions, and how can we measure the carbon emissions of digital products. And we started with some research, and we came across a couple of carbon estimation models, and we knew we were on the right track, but how do we expose that to our user base, and how do we leverage these models in a meaningful way? So we played around with a couple of different types of products, and we talked about it earlier. You had a website carbon calculator that could measure the carbon emissions of a specific web page or website as it is visited. And we played around with a couple of different other options. And in the end, it seemed more impactful to have this technology in the browser. So instead of having to put this technology in multiple different things and trying to put it all together to see overall what the impact would be, through the browser, we kind of get an overall picture of a user's browsing session and the impact of that.
Quick note here, the Inspire program at the University of Victoria exists to help research turn ideas into real-world impact. And what I love about this story is that it didn't start inside a billion-dollar tech giant. It started in a university lab. The kind of climate tech we need is going to come from unexpected places, and this is a great example of what that pipeline can look like when it works. So you have Shift, which has obviously people using your browser. This is being worked on currently, this kind of effort towards kind of climate neutrality. And obviously I can appreciate the amount of effort and time and understanding and development to try to do this. Once you do this, though, how do you go to market with this? Because it's one thing to be a company that is fully focused on either technology, or a company that's fully focused on bringing a kind of a climate solution to market. But the balance here, I'm curious, because I think a lot of people are listening around this idea of how do you incorporate, sustainability, or how do you incorporate climate into our business, but still having our business being, our technical advantage, or the other things that we spend a lot of time building as well. So like, how do you think about go to market, and how do you think you're going to bring this to your consumers?
I think it's a great question, and in some ways it might be easier if we were a group at our founding that was completely dedicated to just, a sustainable browser and all the things that could be. And that's what we started with in the first place. But the reality is Shift as a browser has been around for a very long time. And our original go-to-market was more around productivity and being a bit of a browser for work and helping you be more productive on the web. But as we've been growing over time, we're pivoting to more general purpose browsing with lots of new and innovative angles. And, getting close to carbon neutral as a product is one of those angles. So I think we do have to be careful in that regard. And that's why we're working with a local sustainability consulting company to really help us along this path of one, the tech itself, the measurement itself, the messaging, and really have them kind of give their blessing with our go-to-market plan. And then in terms of go-to-market, we definitely hope to educate people on not just digital emissions, but what actually occurs in a browser and how Shift is solving it. We hope to partner with people that are thought leaders in the space that can endorse Shift as a sustainable browser. We hope to partner with companies in the sustainability space, and maybe their teams could be using Shift. And then, of course, just general PR to really get the word out that Shift is making big moves in this space, in the browser space, and we're really excited for that.
Yeah, the numbers of people and the data around consumers and the care that they have around companies that are working towards it. And obviously, I think there's the two differences between the perfect company that's starting from the ground and people that are trying to incorporate it, which also is incredibly important. But they're seeing is that everything from e-commerce rates to conversion rates, when done correctly, really help also to fuel kind of growth of companies. How does a consumer interact with it, Maham? Like, does this sit just in the background while people are using the product? Are they going to be able to interact and see what their own impact is from this? And like, I guess, how does a customer now interact once you do launch this thing in Shift?
Yeah, we definitely have a user-facing component where they can take a look at the emissions of their recent web browsing history, and also just the emissions of all of the Shift users combined. Neil mentioned education. I think education is at the forefront of our strategy. As a user, there's only small things or small steps that you can take or you can change in your behavior to make a difference. And I think at this stage, education and awareness is so significant. And I think having a user-facing component that gives the user an overview of the emissions, but puts some knowledge and awareness in bite-sized pieces, and for our users that are more interested in doing a deep dive, having a way for them to fully understand how we're calculating it, what is being calculated, and what third-party researches or models that we've built our work on top of. So I think having a layered transparency approach with the users would be pretty valuable to help them understand what the impact truly is and what Shift is doing to mitigate that.
Most companies stop at measurement, but Shift is building this in a way that's meant to change behavior. And that's where this gets powerful, because once users see their emissions and once emissions become part of their browser experience, it stops being invisible. That's how norms shift, and Shift is literally trying to normalize climate accountability at the UX level. From a team perspective and a partner perspective, obviously you've been working on this for a while now and having lots of discussions. Has there been just an added benefit to just the employees working on this, the goal of trying to work on this to solve this kind of technical problem, from partners saying like, oh, this is we would love to learn more. How do we partner on this? Like, has a business benefited from an employee standpoint and a partner standpoint?
I think 100%, or if you can give a higher percent than 100, then go with that number. It's been an amazing thing to kind of rally the team around and behind. Everyone is pumped for it. Everyone can't wait to see this live in the near future for our users and to talk about it. Our purpose at Shift as a company is to empower people to make the most of life online, and this is just perfectly in line with that use this browser and make an impact against climate change throughout the choice that you as a consumer can make for an alternative browser. And I think that's really powerful to add that level of purpose to a team behind the browser.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk around investment here, right? And I think a lot of people are sometimes struggle with that trade-off between the cost and the investment, and what do you get on the other side of it. And I think there are usually lots of different pieces, as you mentioned. And I'm excited to obviously see from a consumer side what those benefits will be. Maham, kind of as we wrap things up, I wanted us to think about, or ask you about, really, is what do you think is going to kind of happen in this space over the next kind of 3 to 5 years? Just from, you've spent, nearly 2 years, I think, working really in this challenge space. You've seen companies that are consulting to likes of Volkswagen to build these type of awareness campaigns. We're starting to see, different ideas around how does AI play in this, and what's your overarching thoughts around this space and where maybe people should be looking when it comes to the emissions online?
I think the space has been moving so fast. When we started 2-3 years ago, a lot of companies were just starting out, just exploring the concept, and now we're here with a lot of big companies like Volkswagen, Netflix, who are conducting studies on their impact and learning how to mitigate that. And then there's research coming out about how digital products can reduce their impact, or how we can overall improve the impact of the internet as a whole and the physical infrastructure underneath. And it's just ramping up and getting faster and faster. And I think in the next couple of years, sustainability and being accountable for the carbon emissions of your digital products would no longer be an optional thing. I think not only would it be a competitive advantage, I think we're moving towards there being regulatory measures or requirements for a business to be able to account for the emissions of all of their products, and that includes digital products as well. And I think it makes it a bit complex when you start thinking about AI and cryptocurrency, because AI is so new in terms of how long it's existed compared to the rest of the technology we have on the internet. And not many researchers have started exploring how to measure the emissions of AI, but I have been seeing a couple of people in this space start to talk about it and start to do experiments and start to see if this is something we can tackle and something we can add on to all of our existing research models and calculation models.
And do you think from from an opportunity perspective, it seems like there's a lot of room right now for companies to figure out how to do a lot of things online that is less energy intensive, because less energy intensive typically means that things are a little bit faster and things run a little bit smoother. And so there seems like there's a kind of a hand in hand between a technical benefit, but also, a reduction also in just the energy usage to deliver whatever that is that they're trying to deliver online.
Yeah, you're so right. There is a big technical benefit in terms of speed, in terms of efficiency. And I think slowly more and more service providers on the internet are moving towards sustainable infrastructure as well. I know Google and I know Amazon have made commitments to be fully carbon neutral in the next couple of years or so. And a lot of organizations use other services, especially Google and Amazon. And I think right now the options to switch to technology that is fully carbon neutral or working towards it are limited. But I think we're heading in the direction where it would be pretty easy to switch to a more sustainable option without having to compromise in terms of efficiency or speed in any way.
That's it for today's Earth Week episode. What stuck with me is this. We often talk about climate impact in terms of big infrastructure, grids, EVs, policy shifts. But this conversation was a reminder that our digital lives carry a carbon cost too. And if you're building software or hardware or anything in between, you can design for sustainability. It just takes intention. And if working on climate solution yourself, especially one rooted in tech, I want to remind you that applications are now open for the Shift Impact Grant. It's a $25,000 grant plus tools to help you grow and a feature right here on this podcast. The deadline is May, and all the details are at shift.com/impact. As always, if you like this episode, share it with someone building something meaningful, and we'll see you next time.